Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Clarity and Confidence Live. I have a special guest with me today. I have Theresa Nordstrom. She is the CEO of Talent Company Inc., and she is an executive recruiter. She has decades of experience in talent acquisition, in leadership, recruiting, creating human capital strategies, and I'm not even going to do it justice. So, Theresa, I'm going to let you finish that introduction, and then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, actually, it's pretty simple. I help companies that are disrupting their industries fill their toughest roles. And I do it in a way that is more marketing versus recruiting, because in today's landscape, you really need to tell your story and attract the best candidates. And, usually you need to go out and find the candidates these days, but you really can attract candidates. So, that's what I do.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that you are so good at that we're going to talk about today, and this is why I specifically wanted you, is helping organizations bring more diversity into their leadership ranks. And this is important because the research shows is that in every level of leadership, women and especially people of color are
Mhm.
underrepresented. They get less leadership development coaching, support, mentoring, etc. They also have a burdening workload that white men just don't
Mhm.
tend to take on. And this is really important because all of that extra workload causes women to burn out. And when they burn out, they leave the workforce. And right
Mhm.
now, 1 in 4 women is considering leaving the workforce due to burnout. We
Mhm.
also know that the data shows that about that same amount of women are making career changes. And so when
Mhm.
companies lose women in leadership, sometimes it's hard to replace them if they're not coming back into the workplace. And this isn't just a social justice issue, it just isn't a quality issue, it's an economic issue because when women are represented in the senior most levels, companies earn 50% more in profit. And
Mhm.
when women can close the salary gap, which we're going to talk about, and earn more money, research shows that they in turn invest that money back into their families and their communities. So this isn't an equality issue, it's an economic issue. And so that's why I'm glad that you're here today. And if you're here watching us live, say hello and definitely drop your comments and questions in the chat because we'd love to answer them live as well. But that's why I have Theresa here. I'm going to ask Theresa just a handful of questions about what she is seeing in the market in terms of women leaders who want these roles, what organizations can do to attract more women into these roles, what's happening in the diversity landscape, what's happening in the job market, and even then just talking about what you're seeing in salary expectations. So I have a couple questions for you. Let's just go ahead and kick it off.
Yep.
Tell us more about what is the general state of recruiting today? What are you seeing for women who are looking for those senior roles? And what are you seeing for employers who are looking to bring more women into leadership?
Yeah. So honestly, it's strong for both. I mean, honestly, so obviously companies are looking for female leaders and diversity of women. So I think that's the good news for women. If you are looking to make a change, which I think bad thing for employers if you have women in leadership and they are looking to make a change often.
Mhm.
Companies are looking for more female leaders. So that is one thing I think. One of the things though is that employers, we'll talk more about this, but they got to have the right environment for those leaders out there. One thing I think we'll talk about this a little bit though, that some women are going, well, wait a second, I've been applying for all these jobs and
Mhm.
they don't, I'm not getting any response. So we'll talk about that. But the thing is that employers have a very, in some cases, very narrow, maybe looking through a keyhole mindset of what they're potentially looking for. So
Mhm.
employers are definitely looking for female leadership. It's whether they have the right landscape or mindset of what they're looking for. So it's a great environment to be looking for a role. If you're a female and you maybe were considering re-entering the workforce, a couple of years ago, right now is a better time. So it's a great landscape. It's a matter of whether, as an employer, you're maybe have the right environment for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think now's a great time to talk about that because I work with women leaders oftentimes
Mhm.
who know they want to accelerate into that next level of leadership, right? Make the jump from director to VP or VP to
Mhm.
CMO or CHRO or whatever that is. And they know that the market is saturated, so they have to stand out. But I
Mhm.
also, would love to hear, how do women stand out? But I would love for you to describe more, like, when employers are looking for female talent. You mentioned to me offline something about the Cinderella effect. Are they being too specific? Tell us more about that environment that you feel like they need to be considering to find the right person.
Yeah. So, so first of all, I think, and you'll hear a lot of recruiters speak about this, and whether it's male or female, honestly, is that, you know, employers, if you are looking for, I mean, honestly, any employee right now of a certain criteria, quit looking for Cinderella.
Mhm.
Stop looking to match that shoe up. There is honestly, and maybe not in tech, to be quite honest with you. That maybe like if you're looking for a certain
Mhm.
type of developer, or whatever it may be. But otherwise, if you have HR roles, marketing roles, certain type of leadership roles, and you're not filling them, and you want diversity or you want female leadership, I'd say look in the mirror, not out the window. That
Mhm.
your criteria, that you're probably looking through a keyhole, and you're probably waiting for Cinderella. And
Mhm.
so that is probably one thing, that your criteria is so narrow. One of the things is that they have, I want to say, they have criteria that they're looking for, but often, I think probably yourself, myself, I had roles in my past that honestly I'm like, wow, how did I even get that role? It wasn't because of the boxes that I had checked in the past. It's because someone had trusted me to
Mm.
figure it out.
Mhm.
And that is one thing, is trust that someone will learn that. The other factor I will say is that, if you let's just speak about females.
Mhm.
I think people are looking for a certain group of females, and it's very much age related, to be honest with you. I actually, this one breaks my heart. It really does. There's a diverse female that I met on LinkedIn probably about 10 days ago. She applied for 140 jobs.
Mm.
I believe, and she's like in her, I think, mid 40s.
Mhm.
She has received less than, I think, maybe less than 10 responses. I think maybe 5 responses. So, um the thing is their criteria is so strict, and I think that some women are like, oh my gosh, I have all these, people looking at me, and other
Mhm.
great leaders, and I'm talking Fortune 100, Fortune 200 startup experience,
Mhm.
that maybe they took time off. I also met a woman who said she worked at a large pharmaceutical company, took time off,
Mhm.
said, oh my gosh, I had this great career, I'm going to go back. Has struggled finding a role. So, yeah, I think that's a Cinderella thing.
Mhm.
That the criteria is very narrow minded.
Yeah.
That we're
So what
looking
I hear
for.
you saying is that organizations probably need to look more at potential
Hmm.
and skills. Do I trust this person? Right. Actually, I don't remember who did the research, if it was
Hmm.
McKinsey, said that past performance is actually not an indicator of future
Hmm.
success, kind of like the stock market. And I kind of hear you
Yeah,
saying that with women as well. And so for organizations who are looking to diversify, if I could maybe summarize it, it's,
yeah,
what, we can't use the same old criteria we've used in the past. Otherwise, we're probably going
yeah,
to get the same results. And so maybe it's, time for
yeah,
us to kind of broaden our strategies.
yeah. Or even like the same, like this experience. I think one of
Mhm.
the challenges I would say, if you have recruiters, so one of the challenges is that there's a lot more recruiters that don't have the experience, and they are not able to make the correlation of this experience translate to this experience. So all of a
Mhm.
sudden, you may be missing out on talent, and they are not able to make that judgment of like, geez, she started this program over here. It doesn't necessarily exactly relate over here. So that would be the only thing about that, past experience doesn't relate over here. You probably know the numbers. McKinsey has it out there. Um, Many women are looking to change roles. And actually, gosh,
Mhm.
there is one that talks about people wanting to go into STEM jobs, but
Mhm.
they don't know how to do it. Oh my God. Everyone wants women in STEM, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, how do you help them feel more comfortable and make that leap into STEM? So,
Mhm.
but I think, that's at the end of the day, I always talk about not being a checklist recruiter, and are you not a checklist hiring leader? You know, um, you know what? There's one thing: women, if they have taken time off, they haven't, they're not less intelligent.
Mhm.
They've actually grown while they've been taking time
Mhm.
off. And
Mhm.
yeah, don't devalue their time off. There's probably lots of things that they've learned to do, and they haven't lost all that talent that that they
Oh, for
had
sure.
before.
That's so important to really take a look at the whole picture.
Hmm.
Um, let's just talk about the salary gap, because you and I have had
Hmm.
conversations about what I've seen
Yeah.
personally. For those who don't know, I spent many years in human resources. And so, I've been on the corporate side of it. But the research shows that there is still a salary gap
Hmm.
between men and women. Women make on average, again, 80 cents for every dollar a man makes, but that's white women. Black women make
Hmm.
less. Latina women make less. Any woman of color makes less. So,
Hmm.
what are you actually seeing out in the job market in terms of salary expectations, and what should women be
Yeah.
thinking about when they go into negotiations? What do employers need to be doing to make sure that they're offering equitable pay?
Yeah. So again, I think I really so I'm a former HR leader as well.
Mhm.
And man, I had it hit home this summer. It was really tough actually to see this. So I've recruited I've actually always recruited quite a few remote roles. And then this summer in Omaha, I had some roles. So I saw the diversity thing come up too. I had a couple of women of color, and both in the Midwest and on the East Coast. One that was like 175. It was a fairly senior role. Her male counterparts were like 220. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my
Mhm.
gosh. And so here's the thing. So I definitely have seen it. And I don't know if I had really seen it as much in the past. And I don't know, maybe honestly, I don't know, maybe my blinders were on as well. Here's a couple things though. One, I think as an employee, so in that case, um, one thing the way I recruit is I definitely in those situations I was very frank with them. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, first of all,
Mhm.
um, I would not let them. As I told them, I said, "I won't let you throw yourself under the bus." Is kind of what I
Mhm.
told them. I said, here's what the role pays. What I will tell you, and I want to tell women this: there's a clear difference on how women, when I ask, I usually say something of the nature of, what are you expecting in your next role for compensation, or what's it going to take for you to move? Even though we have been talking about this for, probably a couple years, and especially in the last year, the difference between male and female, even really strong, kind of high powered women, I couldn't believe
Mhm.
it. Like, the women would go, "Well, I don't have a ton of experience. I just kind of transitioned in this role, so I don't really want to take a pay cut. I'd be looking for like a, lateral." I was like, "No, no, no." I said, "You have experience. You're valued at this." A male, actually in this case, much less experience would be like, "Well, I'd definitely be looking to probably get a 15 to 20% increase." I
Mhm.
mean, the demeanor that I heard on the phone was extreme. I mean, I'm just so passionate about this. It was like night and day difference.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I'm just telling you, I could not believe how common this was.
Mhm.
Uh, I just learned a ton this summer myself. And so what I've really taken upon is as a recruiter, and I would ask my peer set out there, you guys don't allow women to do that to
Mhm.
themselves. And these women were so appreciative of it, appreciated me to say this to them and say, you know what? I would give them feedback. Like, if you're working with another recruiter, you know, um, I would go back. Here's what I would do. I would say, first of all, I would know I would try and figure out what that role would pay. So first of all, the state of Colorado has a pay transparency act. You can actually go research roles
Mhm.
in Colorado. So if I'm applying for whatever IT role, marketing role, even though you're not in Colorado, you can at least see what that role would pay,
Mhm.
and then maybe translate it to your state. You can look on Glassdoor. So
Mhm.
Glassdoor, you can then, even if it's a manager role in HR, and HR people haven't said what their salaries are, you can again look at a manager role, especially larger companies, and see
Mhm.
what they're paid. So try and do your research, right? So first of all, don't go into an interview cold. And then, depending if it's internal or external recruiter, if they ask you what you're going to pay, what you want, you turn it around. Say, what's the salary range for this role? So
Yeah.
I could talk about salary all day long.
Oh, I
So
could too. I actually wrote in, Theresa and I are actually both in Nebraska, but I wrote into the Nebraska state legislature last year because they had a bill on the books, because many other states are doing this,
Mhm.
that would ban salary history from applications. Because what
Mhm.
they found, and I can speak to this from an HR perspective, is that, because women have typically, and people of color have typically been paid less than white men,
Mhm.
their salary history is going to be less. And so that
Mhm.
creates an anchoring bias, right? Whereas
Mhm.
like if you're a man and you got paid $100,000, I'm a woman, I got paid $80,000. Well, I'm already coming in with an anchoring bias of 20% less. And
Mhm.
that's, it perpetuates the system to see,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? Well, we could just pay this person 90,000. It would be a raise from their last role, but that doesn't fix the issue of equity. It's, you need to pay what's equitable in the market. And so I'm a huge proponent of the states who have eliminated salary history requests, because it removes that anchoring that
Mhm.
already puts people of color and women at a disadvantage, because they already have been paid less, and it just perpetuates
Yeah.
the issue. So I know I could go on and on about salary, but the
Yeah.
key is there is a huge demeanor difference, and you need to ask for what you deserve.
Yeah. The demeanor was surprising. So yeah. Mhm.
Oh, I see it. I coached both men and women. Now I coach
Mhm.
primarily women, but I saw it as a corporate HR person. I saw it as a coach, and
Mhm.
just the general demeanor in terms of like
Yeah.
men walk in with a hand, this is what I'm going to get. When or
Yeah.
women will be like, I kind of like, no.
Women are worried about shooting themselves in the foot. Like,
Yes.
"Oh,
Yes.
I really want this job, and so I'm gonna say 140 instead of 155." And men are like, "You know what? I'm gonna go for 160," and they'll offer me 140 if they really think I'm more, worth
Yeah.
less. And so
Totally.
it's a whole mindset thing. So anyways, I think the recruiter you work for makes a big difference, and knowing if, I mean, that's honestly just a
Mhm.
big difference as well. So,
Yeah. And I would tell corporate CEOs who are looking for those CEO or C suite level of roles is to, one, make sure you are paying equitably in the C
yeah.
suite, knowing that if you are hiring diverse candidates,
Mhm.
it can be tempting to say, ooh, we can get this person for cheap because they
Yep.
have traditionally been paid less and we're still giving them a raise. I think that that's a craptastic way of doing it. And I think it's more about how do we be leaders in pay equity and
Yeah.
making people whole when they get there. So
Negotiate product, not people is what I say. I mean,
yes.
honestly, I work with my clients. We know the top end of our pay. And I mean, we are honestly, it's kind of amazing. We make our best offer and we are very aligned with the candidate. I'm very upfront with the candidate on where they stand. Like we talk about the value. It's kind of crazy on how aligned we get. So not all the time, but
Yeah.
we really do try to. So
Women, it's okay to talk about money.
yeah.
So what advice do you have then for companies regarding creating more diversity at the top? So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I really want
Mhm.
you to like think about if there are two or three things that organizations should be thinking about. What is it, in terms of creating a diverse senior leadership team?
Yeah. Well, you do have to have leadership at the top that is diverse. I mean, I think let's just be at the beginning, everyone went out and made sure they had diversity at the top, right? So I think,
Some organizations did. I see plenty examples in front of my own face,
me
and
too.
online all the time of organizations who still have all male leadership teams. So
I'll be honest with you. When I see organizations, when I see a video, I see something pop up on LinkedIn, I recognize whether they do or they don't.
mm,
And guess what? My candidates do as well. They're
say
going
more.
right. They're going right to the board page,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's all white men of a certain age.
Yep.
I'm just being frank. They
Yep.
are.
Yep.
And you know what? It's disappointing. I think there are certain parts of the country that are worse than others.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that yeah, it's just a fact. Yeah, we have challenges with that. So I think that your candidates are being aware that there's actually there's studies about called I think it's like only like if I'm the only woman of color,
Hmm.
like I tell you what, and I mean I have a good friend who has often been that only woman of color, and she has done extremely well, but I now look back and think, oh my gosh, how challenging, right? So think about those things in the environment that you're creating for that. So one thing is the more I see in the last year, definitely think about the bias training and don't do it as a checklist behavior
Hmm.
or training, I guess you should say. And, one of the things that's really coming up is actually women in the research on D&I efforts. Women are more likely, to, I guess, lead and develop D&I.
Mhm.
Now they don't feel appreciated for it. That's another factor,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think that is another factor in it. But it's like,
Mhm.
so I think that realizing, being on purpose with actually not even I actually think the D&I effort, but even around the female leadership within the differences between how females lead and male leaders. I saw a study on how um, females interview versus males, and as I think back through some of the times that I've been in, actually more probably tech interviews, and how female would answer versus a male,
Mhm.
there was probably a lot of bias in those interviews. Is like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
she answered that way, and we probably had a lot of bias going on in that interview and made decisions on that. So that's that. So I think that here's one thing. I'm always about solving the root cause, root
Mhm.
problem. Hybrid is obviously, remote is always a big thing right now. Females want it.
Mhm.
And if you have leaders right now that are female, that are diverse, you need to understand and be talking to them about why they're staying or why they would be potentially leaving.
Mhm.
Um, because they likely are potentially considering leaving, and you need to work on retaining. They are so busy right now. Most women are overwhelmed,
Mhm.
and I guess that's one of my biggest things is don't sweep it under the carpet. You
Mhm.
need to be aware and be looking at it, and get down to the root cause and
Mhm.
have some and think about it. So,
Absolutely. I published an article in Parents Magazine about a month ago that just talked about kind of some of the things that you're saying, which is, to bring and retain um, women leaders, working mothers back to the office. We need more of them in
mhm,
leadership because you talked about their leadership style. You
mhm,
talked about how they tend to lead more employee development, DEI initiatives. It's a struggle because they don't always get recognized for it, which leads to
mhm,
overwork, burnout, et cetera. But I think that's really important. And it's something else that you really said, without really saying is at some point, if your leadership team is not diverse, there will be a cost to your status quo. You may not
mhm,
feel it right now
mhm.
because your organization
Yeah.
is getting results. But it's something that compounds over time because it affects your leadership pipeline. I just read a wonderful book. I wish I could hold it up. It's over there. Called
Mhm,
My Life in Full by Indra
mhm,
Nooyi. She was the CEO and board chairman of PepsiCo.
mhm.
And she talked about this as well in her book, is that if women don't see a pipeline to the top, they will turn over. And so then
Yeah.
when you are, the old ranks are ready to retire, the pipeline is less. And Gen Z millennials are looking for that diversity coming in. So it affects your whole talent pipeline. So it's not something that you're maybe going to see direct impact in the next 12 months, but it's definitely going to impact your talent strategy. And the cost of maintaining the status quo will be quite dire, and risk turnover, lack of innovation, lack of a good talent pipeline to promote from. It will be evident in the next 5 years. I mean, you can disagree with me or tell me where I'm wrong, but
No, I think so, definitely. We probably, one of the comments, I was recruiting this gal. I mean, I'll just be honest, she has 5 kids. She was perfect for this really hard to fill role. I mean, extremely
Mhm.
hard. And the role was all in house. And honestly, I was just like, the role. She said to me, she goes, Teresa, I I really need. I love. She's like, she really wanted this role because she's like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
it sounds really good. She goes, but she said to me, she goes, you know what? I just would rather I really would need to spend my time putting a load of laundry in instead of 5 minutes at the water cooler talking about
Mhm.
nothing, or, talking about maybe, who knows what, sometimes there is quality conversation at the water cooler. And I think it just kind of leads that gal I see did leave that organization, and she went to a fully remote company, and she left a Fortune 100 organization and went to another very strong company type thing. But I think about that conversation. That woman wanted it all. She has 5 kids.
Yeah.
I mean, she has helped a company go public in
Mhm.
her role, and I'm just like, that's the type of person
Mhm.
that you could actually have in more of those. I mean, and she was not old by any means. She was middle-aged, and I'm going, we're missing out on talent like that. And that younger pipeline, those companies that are in-house still, you are going to miss out on that female leadership as they choose to go to other companies that are remote. Over time, you're just going to have male domination, and we need a mix. I think it's not like male. I feel like horrible.
No,
It's
it's
like we
not
need
men
a
versus
mix.
women. It's men and women.
Yeah.
And I always tell organizations that your leadership team should reflect your customer base, because that way
Yeah.
your customers are heard at the end of the day. Because that's what's important here. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
So anyways,
So what final thoughts as we wrap up here would you leave? Let's talk to women
Oh,
specifically who are
yeah.
in the job market. I have clients like that too. They're like, Kelli, I've been on 50 interviews, you know, and I just
Yeah.
talk women who are looking to leave their
Yep.
organization, to level up. What's like one final piece of advice you'd leave with a woman who's in the job market right now? How can she stand out? What can she do?
My one thing is actually for both. You need to, one, go look for companies that are remote. You can Google them. A lot of times, a lot of companies are now speaking about it. Go find the hiring leaders on LinkedIn. I'd start following them. I'd like their things. So one of the things is the more active you are on LinkedIn, the more likely you are to get recruited, because on the back end on our recruiting thing, it says how likely are they to respond, so that even if you don't have your turn on your button. Here's the other thing. On your phone, you can send a voice message on your phone to like, hey, Kelli, my name is Theresa Nordstrom. I'd love to learn more about that role. Or even if they don't have a role in the future, I'm considering new opportunities. Could we have a 15-minute conversation? Here's the deal. As a recruiter, I rarely get messages. I used to once in a while. Why fit in when you're born to stand out? And send a message and send your resume with it. It depends on where, I guess it depends on where you're at in the recruiting process. If you applied for a role, I'd recommend you sending a resume with it, but go find them.
I love
Because
it.
here's the deal. Recruiting is overwhelmed, you guys. You know what? They're understaffed. They're overwhelmed. Please don't get mad, because very few recruiting teams are well staffed. They
I
just
love
are.
your idea to put a personal touch to it. And I always tell my clients, LinkedIn is a content platform, not just a recruiting platform. And your advice was brilliant in how to make connections. And that's so important right now to stand apart. So I love it. It should be on repeat. Theresa, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
it was
joining
good.
me today. I think it was awesome to shed a little bit light on both ends. Women, how you can stand out, what the job market is like right now in terms of salary expectations, what you should be asking for, so you can move into those ranks of leadership. And employers who are listening, who are thinking about creating more diversity, take Theresa's tips to heart. She works with organizations all of the time to attract a diverse talent pool. They want remote. Take a look at your interview biases. Take a look at where you need to change your policies so that you can attract the talent of the future. So Theresa, thank you so much for joining. Can you tell everyone where to find you if they want your help?
Yeah, it's talentcoinc.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. It's Theresa Nordstrom. Just Google me. You'll find me.
Sounds awesome.
So,
Go find her.
all right.
She'll help you
Thanks.
out. She's
All right.
amazing. Thanks, Theresa.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.